In the intricate world of global commodities, two French words are enough to send a chill down the spine of any central banker or industrial CEO: force majeure. Just days ago, on March 4, 2026, the state-run energy giant QatarEnergy officially invoked them. Following a coordinated barrage of drone and missile strikes on its critical infrastructure at Ras Laffan, the company was forced to completely halt all production of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The mainstream media is attempting to frame this as a temporary supply disruption that the market can readily absorb. They are dangerously mistaken. This is a catastrophic contract collapse that has instantly paralyzed roughly 20% of the entire global LNG market. It has ignited a chain reaction that is about to slam the European continent with a devastating wave of deindustrialization and inflation. So today, we will dissect the complex legal plumbing of the global natural gas market. We will explain precisely how force majeure operates within international energy contracts, and reveal why this seemingly mundane legal clause is, in fact, a ticking time bomb for the European economy and the European Central Bank. To fully grasp the magnitude of this economic shock, we must first examine the illusion of European energy security. For the past 3 years, European politicians have been congratulating themselves on successfully weaning their economies off Russian pipeline gas. In 2021, Russia supplied roughly 40% of the European Union's pipeline gas imports. But following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines, Europe was thrust into a frantic pivot. It replaced those cheap, reliable pipelines with massive shipments of seaborne LNG. By 2025, Russian pipeline gas had dwindled to just 6% of the EU's energy mix, while LNG imports surged to record highs. The United States emerged as the dominant supplier, providing approximately 60% of those LNG imports, while Qatar became a critical pillar, supplying much of the rest. The prevailing political narrative was one of success. Europe had diversified its energy grid and secured its industrial future. But the structural reality was far more precarious. Europe had merely swapped one profound geopolitical dependency for another. Instead of relying on pipelines from the east, their entire industrial complex now depended on specialized tanker ships navigating some of the most dangerous maritime choke points on Earth. The moment those ships stopped moving, the entire European energy strategy began to unravel. On March 2, 2026, the physical reality of this vulnerability was laid bare when Iranian drones struck QatarEnergy's facilities. Simultaneously, the escalating conflict effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the vital waterway through which Qatar exports 90% of its LNG. Over 150 vessels, including massive LNG carriers, were forced to drop anchor, stranded and waiting. Now, a common assumption, heavily promoted by the mainstream media, is that Europe spent the last few years building up massive strategic gas reserves for just such a contingency. The narrative being pushed is that European reserves are full and the continent will be fine. This narrative is a complete myth, based on outdated seasonal data. As of early March 2026, European Union gas storage stands at a mere 30% of capacity. This is the lowest level recorded since the 2022 energy crisis and sits a full 30% below the 5-year seasonal average. In critical industrial hubs like Germany, storage is hovering around 30%, while the Netherlands has plummeted to an abysmal 10%. Europe is entering the crucial spring and summer injection season with dangerously depleted buffers. These reserves are an insurance policy for short-term cold snaps, not a substitute for the continuous, daily flow of contracted LNG imports that keep heavy industry online. And those contracted flows have just been legally severed. This brings us to the mechanics of force majeure, and why it is so devastating. In plain English, the term translates from French as superior force. It is a specific legal concept embedded in international sales agreements that absolves a party from liability when unforeseeable or extraordinary events prevent them from fulfilling a contract. This is not a simple shipping delay or a request to reschedule. When QatarEnergy invoked force majeure, it legally voided its immediate contractual obligations to deliver millions of tons of gas to its buyers. To understand why this is a financial powder keg, you must grasp the difference between long-term LNG contracts and the spot market. Think of a long-term LNG contract as a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. European energy companies sign deals with Qatar to buy gas at a price typically pegged to 11 to 13% of the price of Brent crude oil. With oil around $75 a barrel, these companies locked in natural gas at a predictable rate of roughly $7 to $10 per million British thermal units, MMBTU. This fixed rate is the bedrock of industrial planning, allowing chemical plants and steel mills to forecast costs years in advance and operate profitably. But when a supplier declares force majeure, that fixed-rate contract is effectively suspended. The buyer, who believed they had guaranteed cheap energy, is suddenly cast out into the cold. They are forced to procure replacement gas on what is known as the spot market. The spot market is the equivalent of an adjustable-rate mortgage during a full-blown banking crisis. There is no price ceiling, no protection, and you are bidding against every other desperate buyer on the planet. The moment QatarEnergy took 20% of the global supply offline, panic rippled through Asian markets, which rely heavily on Qatari gas. They immediately flooded the spot market, hunting for replacement cargoes. In response, the Asian benchmark price, known as the JKM, exploded. In just 5 days, the price of Asian spot LNG surged from $10.75 to an astonishing $25.39 per MMBTU, a 137% price spike in less than a week. Because the global LNG market is deeply interconnected, European buyers are now forced to bid against these energy-starved Asian nations to secure any available American or West African cargoes. We are already seeing the physical evidence of this bidding war play out on the high seas. Vessel tracking data from early March revealed a stunning spectacle: multiple LNG tankers from the United States and Nigeria executing massive U-turns mid-voyage in the Atlantic. They literally diverted their courses away from Europe, heading toward Asia via the Cape of Good Hope, because Asian buyers were willing to pay enormous premiums. This intense competition has sent the European gas benchmark, the TTF, surging by over 70% to more than €60 per megawatt-hour. The logistical chaos of avoiding the Middle East has caused LNG tanker charter rates to double to an astronomical $200,000 per day. Even the maritime insurance markets are fracturing, with leading insurers canceling war risk coverage for any vessel operating in the region. When global supply chains fracture like this, the economic fallout hits your wallet through inflation faster than you can possibly prepare. Speaking of preparing, if you want to face macroeconomic pressures like these and emerge intact, being well-informed is an absolute must. That's why every week we publish a free newsletter that breaks down the complex geopolitical and financial data the mainstream media completely ignores. We provide actionable insight you need to understand how these macro forces and shocks will actually impact your portfolio and purchasing power. You can sign up right now by hitting the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on your screen. It's completely free and it's the best way to stay ahead of the curve in a market that is pricing in total chaos. Okay, back to the video. When spot natural gas prices double in a matter of days, it doesn't just mean a higher winter heating bill. It signals the immediate structural deindustrialization of the European continent. To see how this contagion spreads, we need only look at Germany. Germany already has some of the highest industrial energy prices in the world, paying nearly triple what the United States pays for industrial electricity. The German economy is already in a fragile state, having registered negative annual GDP growth for 2 consecutive years in 2023 and 2024. You may have seen recent headlines celebrating the German Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, finally ticking up to 59 in February 2026. Pundits are hailing this as a glorious return to expansion territory after 42 months of contraction. But this recovery is a mirage. It is driven entirely by government infrastructure stimulus and a massive jump in defense spending, not by organic industrial competitiveness. It's a band-aid placed over a gaping structural wound. This new LNG price shock is about to rip it right off. Consider BASF, the world's largest chemical company. Its flagship facility in Ludwigshafen is the beating heart of German heavy industry, and natural gas is its lifeblood. Due to the structurally higher energy costs that began in 2022, BASF has already been forced to eliminate roughly 4,800 jobs and permanently close plants producing critical chemicals. The entire German chemical sector is struggling to survive, operating at an average capacity utilization rate of just 70%. A chemical plant cannot simply absorb a 70% spike in its primary input cost. It either passes that cost on to every manufacturer that buys its products, or it shuts down entirely. The exact same bloodbath is unfolding in the European steel sector. ThyssenKrupp, Germany's largest steel company, recently announced plans to cut 11,000 jobs, a staggering 40% of its entire steel division workforce. The company has already temporarily closed 2 electric steel plants in Germany and France, and is projecting an €800 million net loss for the financial year. Steel production requires enormous amounts of natural gas for heating. When spot prices explode, producing European steel becomes mathematically impossible. But the most terrifying contagion mechanism of all is the European fertilizer industry. Natural gas isn't just used to power the machinery. It is the chemical feedstock used to synthesize ammonia. It accounts for 70% to 80% of the total production cost for nitrogen fertilizers. During the last major gas spike, roughly 70% of the entire European ammonia industry was forced to temporarily shut down. We are already seeing facilities cease production again in early 2026 due to these elevated prices. The economic logic here is brutally simple. Higher spot gas prices lead to fertilizer plant shutdowns, which cause massive spikes in agricultural input costs, which lead directly to explosive food price inflation at the grocery store. The energy shock is systematically destroying the margins of every business that makes physical things, accelerating the rise of what economists call zombie companies. In 2025, the number of insolvent companies in Germany reached its highest level in over a decade, with more than 24,300 cases. Corporate insolvencies in the manufacturing sector specifically shot up by more than 10%, putting hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. According to a study by the Federation of German Industries, 1/5 of Germany's total industrial output could permanently disappear by 2030 due to uncompetitive energy costs. They are witnessing the deindustrialization of their continent in real time. This brings us to the ultimate question: how can the European Central Bank possibly handle a massive structural energy shock when its entire policy framework assumes that energy prices will decline? At its most recent meetings in early 2026, the ECB held its main refinancing rate steady at 2.15%, explicitly stating that its models projected inflation would stabilize at the 2% target. But if you read the fine print of the ECB's macroeconomic projections, their entire baseline scenario relies on negative energy inflation through 2026 and 2027. They literally built their economic models on the assumption that natural gas and oil would continue to get cheaper. The QatarEnergy force majeure has just shattered that assumption. According to peer-reviewed economic models, a gas supply shock that increases prices by just 10% raises euro area headline inflation by 0.6 percentage points after 1 year. With European gas prices up over 70% in a matter of days, the mathematical pass-through to core inflation will be devastating. This places the ECB in an impossible, inescapable bind. If energy prices spike and drive inflation back up to 3% or 4%, the ECB will be forced to hold interest rates high or even hike them further. But doing so would completely crush the already fragile industrial sector, accelerating the wave of bankruptcies and triggering a deep recession. On the other hand, if the ECB panics and cuts interest rates to try and save the manufacturing sector, it risks letting inflation expectations become completely unanchored. This would destroy the purchasing power of the euro, which is already deteriorating. Just this week, the euro-to-dollar exchange rate dropped 1.39%, falling over 3.5% from its January high. And because Europe imports its LNG priced in US dollars, a weaker euro means every single shipment of replacement gas just became even more expensive. It is a perfect, self-fulfilling doom loop. Goldman Sachs recently warned that if the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz lasts for just 1 month, European natural gas prices could approach €74 per megawatt hour. If it lasts for 2 months, prices could easily soar above €100, triggering massive and permanent demand destruction. The transition from cheap pipeline energy to seaborne LNG was always a high-stakes gamble built on a fragile foundation. By invoking force majeure, QatarEnergy has shattered the illusion of European energy security once and for all. The continent is now completely exposed to the brutal, unforgiving realities of the global spot market. It is bidding for its economic survival against Asian giants, and the resulting wave of inflation will force the European Central Bank to choose between saving its currency or saving its industrial base. There are no easy solutions left, only incredibly painful trade-offs. But what do you think? Do you believe Europe's industrial base can adapt and survive this historic energy shock? Or are we witnessing the permanent, irreversible deindustrialization of the continent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want to understand how the growing global debt load is threatening to crash the U.S. economy next, you should check out our video on that right over here. That's all for me today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.